Hello, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. My name is Levin2K and I'm here to bring you the latest Manchester United transfer news, and there's plenty of news to discuss on this fine Sunday morning. So let's get right into it, right? Let's get right into all of the action. Simon Jones, we're going to start off by talking about Simon Jones, who came out with a story on the Daily Mail last night, and a very packed article, to say the least. I read through it and there was he came out of a lot. He came out of a lot, and we'll start off with the sort of leading story there was the fact that Manchester United are potentially in for Niguez for £45 million. Look, we've obviously been linked to Niguez plenty of times. Plenty of times we've been linked to Niguez, and I think, at a certain point, United fans, we get tired of it. We do get a bit tired of it, but it does seem a bit more advanced than usual. Simon Jones goes on to talk about how, in the past, the release clause of Niguez was an issue, right? He had a release clause of about 128 million or something absurd. And obviously that was a big sort of roadblock. And even though he does still have around, 2 or so years on his contract, there is a feeling around both clubs that a deal can be agreed. Now, allegedly, Atletico Madrid are in a bit of financial trouble, just like many clubs in the world are at the moment. And so they are trying to potentially get rid of Niguez, as he's one of their highest earning players. And he somewhat has lost his, importance to the squad to some degree, right? He's not necessarily the most important player like he once was, right? So, there's a deal to be done there potentially, and 45 million doesn't seem like a bad price for it. Now, I think the biggest thing here is Simon Jones does mention the fact that this is potentially on because of the exit of Paul Pogba. Now, in that article, he mentions the fact that Paris Saint-Germain are, continuing to try and bring Paul Pogba over, right? They continue to try and lotion him down, and potentially put in a bid there, right? Now, as well as that, right? This is a big thing. This is why I love to read these articles sometimes, because some of these reporters will sneak things in there that you don't necessarily expect. Now, what he said was that not only is PSG interested in Paul Pogba, but apparently Matic is considering his options. Now, that's something interesting. We've not heard much about Matic. The only thing we really heard about Matic is the fact that he wants to become a coach. But Simon Jones in that article mentioned the fact that Matic is, potentially looking to consider options and maybe leaving the club at some point. And so with that, Manchester United are keen on potentially bringing in Niguez. Now, look, I don't have a problem with Niguez as a player. I think, when you look at his ability as a player, he's got a lot of talent. Is he a more talented player than Paul Pogba? No, but at the end of the day, you got to put in the performances, right? It's not all about talent, right? Some of our best performing players aren't our most talented players, right? I don't think many people would say Bruno is the most talented footballer, but often he puts in the best performances, and that's why he's rated so highly. So, if Niguez could come in and do a job, fair enough. Now, obviously, I think people have looked at Niguez as maybe being a DM option. Personally, I don't see him as that. I think when you look at what we need in the DM, of course, you need somebody with Niguez's progressive passing ability. You need someone who can move the ball and dictate play the way he does, but you also need someone with some sort of defensive acumen, and he doesn't necessarily have that. Now, Atletico Madrid as a team are known to be a good defensive team, right? And their team defending is quite good, right? Their ability to press and in numbers and sort of squeeze the pitch is really effective. But individually as a defender, Niguez hasn't been phenomenal in any sense of the word. So I think, if you're looking at him to be a DM, potentially not. Sorry, I can't even speak English. It's bloody early in the morning. Now, as a number 8, I think he could do that job well. If Pogba is going to be out the door, I definitely think, Niguez could do that job well as a number 8 and come in and do a job there. But of course, you still do need a DM, right? He's not, if we're looking to play a pivot with Niguez, for example, because, I think I've had my mind set on the 4-3-3, but based off of what we've seen from preseason, it doesn't really feel like that. It does seem like we're still going to go with this pivot thing. Niguez in the pivot needs a DM next to him. He just doesn't have the defensive acumen of a DM that you want. Even the people who he gets compared to as potential United targets, right? People like, Rice and Camavinga and even Basuma, who I'm not a fan of as a DM, they all have much better defensive acumen than Niguez. They all do. That's just, factual. If you watch Atletico Madrid, you can just look to so many components, whether that be stats, whether you actually watch the games, whatever it is, Niguez just isn't the best defender. Now, you know, whether you think he can develop into that role or not, fair enough, right? We've seen that with players where players, you know, as they age, I think I've seen Mark say this, right? Where players as they age can develop into DMs when, you know, they're more deep lying playmakers and whatnot. That's fair. I personally am not too interested in that prospect just because, you know we need a CDM desperately. We need a CDM who can do that job well, who can bring in some sort of defensive components to our game. And so I'm not really interested in like taking a gamble on somebody and developing them right into a DM and, you know, telling them to start defending more. I want someone who already does that effectively well and who has a willingness and a hunger to do that. That's personally what I want. And I'm sure a lot of you potentially would agree. AI Perillion said, would you take Sal or Neves? I'd probably take Sal. And the reason I'd probably take Sal is just because if you look at all the reports around Sal and Neves, all of it seems to be contingent on the fact that Pogba leaves. So to me, when you're bringing in one of those two, it's a Pogba replacement. It's somebody who you want to play as a number 8, or if it's in a pivot, the more sort of attacking, marauding DM. Now, of course, you know, Neves is more Premier League proven. And if you are actually looking at just the DM role, I think Neves would probably do that defensive midfield role a lot better. If you were forced to play a single pivot, I do think Neves would probably do the job better. But I'm thinking of it in the eyes of a number 8, because that's who I think United are looking to sort of bring in. Because I think United have accepted the fact that Paul Pogba is probably not going to be our player, whether that be at the end of next season or whether that be during this summer. I think United have started to accept the potential that Paul Pogba will be leaving the club. And that's, you know, that's a hard pill to stomach. That's a whole, you know, sort of conversation in itself. I think that's something we have been talking about on the channel for the past couple of days. I think the general consensus is, look, if Pogba's going to go, let's get something for him. And bringing in Sal or Neves or whoever it be, you know, I'm cool with that, especially if they're going to come in and put in a job. Now, other people would say, look, I'd want Pogba to stay. Even if he is going to leave, I'd want him to stay so that we at least get a year of Paul Pogba, right? Where, you know, we're better with him than without him. Especially if we're not going to replace him, we're better with him than without him. Now, even looking at that, I'd be skeptical because if Pogba is going to run down his contract, he's not playing week in, week out. Let's get that straight. You know, there's going to be a couple injuries here and there. He'll miss some time here and there. And so we're really not even going to get a full season of Paul Pogba, I feel. That's probably what I predict. I think, you know, he probably will try and protect himself. You know, you're not going to want to go out there week in, week out, putting in a hustle when you know you're leaving and you know you're getting yourself ready for your next big club. And not just your next big club, but the last big contract of your career. I feel like he probably would protect himself quite a lot. And so, you know, us being okay with Pogba just, you know, giving us that final year running down his contract, you know, it's not even going to be a final year, probably. Realistically, it's probably not going to be a final year. So that's that. Simon Jones didn't stop there, though, because within that article, Simon Jones did talk about Leon Goretzka as well, who's someone we've been linked to now. He mentioned, you know, he said that Manchester United have held discussions with Leon Goretzka and his representatives and whatnot. But to be fair, Simon Jones did mention in that article that it's more likely that Leon Goretzka is angling towards a new contract with Bayern Munich. He would prefer to resolve the contract issues with Bayern Munich and stay there. So, you know, I think that's something that I think a lot of us expected. A lot of us sort of saw it that way as well. We've sort of thought he was doing the Ramos classic where, you know, you use Manchester United to get a bigger contract. But that's just how it is. And beyond that, he did specify that a lot of the midfield, you know, battle for who we're going to bring in or what not will depend a lot on how much we pay for Raphael Varane and how much we have left after we pay for Raphael Varane. And, you know, he said that the talks with Raphael Varane and Real Madrid are moving in a positive direction, which, although there has been some worry over the past couple of days because, you know, obviously he's gone back to training and people are uncertain of what's actually going to happen with the deal, most people are coming out with reports saying that things are moving in a good direction. So maybe if you want to stay optimistic, that is what you can do. Now, reading a lot of the chats. I love the conversations when it comes to Pogba, when it comes to a potential DM. You guys get very active in the chat, and I appreciate that. Once again, thank you guys all for watching. Be sure to like the video, comment down below what you think of Sal Niguez and whether you'd have him at the club. Be sure to share the video and subscribe to the channel if you are not already. Now, I want to get out some comments here, see what people are saying. Nicholas says, we talk about getting 50 mil for Pogba, but it's the Glazers. They won't invest that 50 mil in the midfield anyway. And I think that's fair, right? Like, that's a fair comment to make, because when you look at it, that is a potential possibility where we could sell Pogba for 50 mil. And people think, you know what? I didn't want Pogba to leave, but at least we got 50 mil for him. That 50 mil's, that 50 mil could just not get reinvested. Like, they could pocket that 50 mil. Do you know what I mean? So it could get really, really scary. We could lose Pogba, get 50 mil for him, but not reinvest that 50 mil. Wouldn't be great. Dougie says, I would love to get Saul Niguez. And I think a lot of people are excited by him. And a lot of people are like Groove Master in chat saying King Pogba must stay. Now, look, I like Pogba. Pogba's one of my, personal favorite players that, I like a lot about Pogba. The reality is that we haven't been able to get the best out of Pogba on a consistent basis at his time at the club. That doesn't mean he hasn't had good moments, because he has had good moments at the club. Even last season, he's had good moments, good performances. But for the world-class talent that he is, we've not got that consistently. And, the one thing that I always sort of have lived by and have believed in is that, the best form of ability is availability. Do you know what I mean? If you're a world-class talent, to me, part of what makes you world-class is that I get that world-class ability week in, week out. That's how I feel. And so, as much as I love Pogba, that's not been the case at United. It's been the case for France. It was the case at Juventus, but it's not been the case for United. And that's why, as much as I acknowledge he's such an amazing talent and that we are better with him than without him, if he's made his mind up that he's going to leave, I'm not burning. I personally am not burning. I'm not going to be sitting there, listening to Drake all sad at night because Pogba's left. I'm not. I will move on with it. I'll be frustrated because I wish we could have gotten the best out of him over the past 4 years, but sometimes that happens in football. Sometimes, you get great players. United, we signed Veron, and he was a great player. He was established as being an elite midfielder, but it just didn't work out at United. That happens. Obviously different circumstances, but, the point stands. That happens. So, that's just what my thoughts are with Pogba. Get Basuma, says James. Look, Basuma, I think a lot of people were impressed by Basuma last season, because Basuma was impressive last season. He was great for Brighton, one of their better players. Now, I have been critical of Basuma because I think many people look at Basuma and think, yeah, Basuma would do a job for us at DM. And maybe he would. But Basuma to me is not a DM. Basuma to me is more of a number 8. Now, I look at Basuma, when he plays for Brighton, he doesn't have much defensive responsibility. Now, he does a much better job of progressing the ball and whatnot, but he doesn't have much defensive responsibility. And I think the big thing is, right, is I don't blame people for seeing that way. That's why I don't blame people for going, Saul Niguez would be a great DM for us. Because you look at our problem at DM, and it has been, we've had McTominay and Fred, who, what they do on a defensive side of the game, it might not be elite, but it's good enough. That's never really our worry. Sometimes it is with Fred, because Fred will have a trampoline foot type of moment and his first touch will ruin us. But defensively, those guys are very proactive. They press a lot. They screen the back four pretty well. The problem with the DM position for us a lot of the time is that we don't have that sort of progressive DM. We don't have someone that can do that well, who has a passing range, who can make line-breaking passes. We don't have that kind of player. And so I think people see somebody who can do that and they go, just stick that guy at DM. It will be much better. And to some degree, yes. To some degree, of course, yes. But you still have to remember that the defensive side of the game is incredibly important, especially if you want that DM to be playing as a single pivot. If you want to have 2 number 8s with Pogba and Bruno and then 1 DM, you need that person, of course, to have that, progressive ability, but you also need them to have defensive attributes that are good. And that doesn't mean they have to be, an Ndidi type anchor man. It can be as simple as somebody who, is known for being really good at reading the game and getting interceptions, right? Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Jorginho, but that's something he does incredibly well. If you watched Italy during the Euros, right? He's not a defensive anchor like Ndidi, but Jorginho reads the game really well and he gets a bunch of interceptions, right? He's sweeping up and collecting through balls that are coming through. Like, that's what you want a good DM to be able to do. You need them to have some sort of defensive acumen, and I just don't think Basuma has that. And fair enough, sometimes that depends on the system. Maybe if you put Basuma in a system where he has to do that, he can do it well. But I've just not seen it from Brighton, which is why I'm not 100% on, yeah, that's the guy to do the job. Just how it is. Mark looks a bit different today. Mark does look a bit different today. He does look a bit different today. But nevertheless, I'm here to give you the news, give you everything that you need to know. And beyond just Simon Jones, there were more stories that came out. A lot of stuff came out, to be fair. And I want to talk about something that I saw on MUFC MPB regarding Anthony Martial. Now, we've not heard much about Martial, right? You know, put your hand up in chat if you feel like we haven't heard much about Martial this summer. I personally don't feel like we have, but we finally did today, because Mundo Deportivo essentially said Barcelona have followed Anthony Martial for a long time. That one's a bit of an interesting run, right? You know, they essentially just let us know Barcelona have followed Martial for a long time. Now, from what I know, you know, there's some truth to that. Martial has been appreciated by Barcelona for a while, and understandably so. You know, Martial's got plenty of talent. He's a very skilled footballer, and as much as he wasn't great last season and he had his issues, you know, you can't forget that he is a talented footballer. Obviously, his work rate comes into question here and there, but regardless, he is a talented footballer. Now, I personally don't see anything in this, because Barcelona, we all know Barcelona are in financial ruin. You know, Barcelona is, you know, they are not looking good financially. They're struggling to register players, let alone will they be able to conjure the funds to be able to get a Martial deal going. Now, you know, it was reported that Martial Man United would be willing to sell Martial for about 50 odd mil. But even that, like, I just don't see it happening, because if you're a team that wants, you know, Martial, right, you're going to have to pay 50 odd mil, plus Martial is on 250k a week, right? It was reported that Tottenham were interested in Martial and that they admire Martial, but, you know, his wages would be, you know, too expensive for them, right? Martial is on 250k a week. Harry Kane is on 200, right? So, you know, Tottenham apparently were sort of scared off in that sense because of that. And even that looks a bit dodgy to me, right? When I think about that, why are Tottenham have been so keen on the fact that they want to keep Harry Kane? Why are they looking at Anthony Martial? Because he's not playing on the left. They just extended Son's contract and he plays on the left, and they want to keep Harry Kane. He plays up front. Why are they even looking at Martial? Either way, it doesn't. Sometimes these things don't make sense, but the world of football doesn't make sometimes. It doesn't make sense sometimes. That's just how it is. But Anthony Martial, I believe he will stay. And I'll link this into sort of the Dan James story, because Manchester Evening News came out saying no one could say with absolute certainty that Dan James will be in the Manchester United squad beyond August. Now, there were some contrasting reports around Dan James over the past 24 hours. There were some very, very contrasting reports around Dan James. There was reports suggesting Dan James were in United's plans, and there were some reports suggesting that Dan James isn't in United's plans, and that you know, there is potential for him to leave, especially after last summer where he was linked to him with a move to Leeds. There was potential for something similar to happen this summer. But Manchester Evening News came out and said, you know, there isn't certainty that he's in the squad. Now, I don't think it makes much sense, right? Because with the reports that suggested that he would be in the plans, their reasoning was with Rashford having his surgery, you know, there's going to be a gap on the left. Dan James is going to be an important player in that sense. Hold on a minute. We have a whole Anthony Martial. Rashford out for 2 months. You know, get well soon, Rashford. You know, heal up, get that shoulder fixed up. But we have an Anthony Martial. Why are we thinking about Dan James playing on the left when we have a whole Anthony Martial? It doesn't make sense. So, you know, respect to Dan James. I don't dislike Dan James. I'll be honest. I'm not Ricky level of love when it comes to Dan James, but I also don't really hate Dan James. I get the frustration around Dan James. At the end of the day, when you're an attacking player, people will expect you to have that final ball. People expect you to have some sort of quality in the final third that allows you to finish opportunities, which he very much lacks. And I think he's useful in other facets of the game, but at the end of the day, as long as he continues to lack that sort of final ball, that final bit of quality when needed, it's just going to be very hard to justify him being a Manchester United player. That's just not the standards I have for my club. So I'm fine with Dan James being out the door. If we can get 15 or so million for him, perfectly fine with that. Because we have an Anthony Martial who can play on the left when, Rashford is out with his injury. So all it is. Dean says maybe Martial doesn't want to play on the left anymore. You know what? You make a good point. Maybe that's the case. But if we saw Oli play Martial on the left last season, right? But before Martial, got injured, he played on the left. There were games where he'd sub on Cavani. Cavani would be up front, and Martial would play on the left. So, for Martial to sort of go at the start of this season, now I'm not really interested in playing on the left. If I'm the manager, if I'm Oli, you don't want to play on the left, right? You don't have to play for Manchester United. Then, if I want to deploy you on the left, I'm going to deploy you on the left. Do you know what I mean? So if it's a case of him being rebellious about that, then maybe his future just isn't at the club, right? Maybe that's just how it has to be, because he deserves an opportunity to fight for his number 9 spot. That is true. I believe that. Even though I love Cavani, it is true. Martial deserves a chance to fight for his number 9 spot. But he doesn't get in over Cavani. Based off of what we've seen last season, he doesn't get in over Cavani. Now, let's say we come to a new season and Cavani's dusted. Let's say now Cavani's his knees really start to kick in. He can't do it the same as he was last season. Then, fair enough. You give Martial and Greenwood more game time up front. It was reported a couple of weeks ago that Cavani's only going to play about 60% of the games this season. Fair enough. But if Cavani's ready and raring to go, yeah, I'm playing Cavani. Martial, you can play on the left while Rashford comes back. And if you do well on the left, yeah, if you do well on the left, then Rashford's going to have to come back and fight for his spot. That's just how it is. You have these types of competition. And, we know Ollie's fine with that. We know Ollie's fine with that concept because he did it to De Gea last season. De Gea had to go, for a non-footballing reason. He had to leave, his child was being born, that kind of thing. He put Dean Henderson in. And when De Gea came back, De Gea had to fight for his spot back. Right. And obviously people would say that wasn't right. That was unfair. But my point is just that Ollie's clearly fine with that. He's clearly fine with players coming in for a short period of time, improving themselves and earning that spot in that period of time. And so if Martial has a good spell as the left winger for us, then he deserves an opportunity to stay there when Rashford comes back. So I'm not too upset with that. Zero Blade says, except we all know Ollie would play Rashford the moment he comes back in. And maybe that is just the manager Ollie is, where regardless, he will play his favourites, regardless of form. But, maybe I'm optimistic. Rashford's English, there's no fighting. Oh, flipping hell. Oh, God. Oh, God. I'm looking forward to the new season, guys. Who else is looking forward to the new season? I'm looking forward to the new season. It's going to be a fun time. It's going to be fun. Good football. Saeed says, hey, Levin, do you think Ollie will start prioritizing fluidity on our way we play and rotating players week in, week out? I think he needs to, but there's nothing Ollie's ever done to show us that he will, right? You look at it and there's nothing Ollie's ever really done to show us that he will. We definitely have the players for it, right? You look at the potential link-up of Donny, Martial, Sancho, those kind of players who like the ball at their feet, who like to pass and move really well. There's potential for some real magical football to be played there. Genuinely, some potential for some real magical football. But, who knows what Ollie's going to pull out of the bag tactically? Who knows? The first super chat of the day. Thank you very much, Dara Kennedy. He came in saying, I'm 100% Ollie in. I think a big question is, can Ollie make the hard decisions? There is so much deadwood, and can he be straight with players for positions? Now, I don't know if he can, because I don't know about you guys, but I was watching the Manchester United, behind the scenes training videos, things, right? And I was watching those, they're decent videos. I wish they were a bit longer, and I wish they didn't have music. I wish you could actually hear the players talking and stuff. But regardless, they're good videos. And about like halfway through one of the videos, right, you know, Ollie's over with Lingard and they're all joking around, laughing around. Ollie gets a bottle of water and pulls it on Lingard's head and they're both giggling and kikiing. And I'm thinking, oh, this guy's lotioning Lingard, man. He's lotioning him up. He is just slapping the lotion all over his back and just rubbing it in. Do you know what I mean? And Lingard's thinking, oh my God, I've got a place in the squad. And it's just so heartbreaking to see this smooth criminal Ollie just lotioning players up, just giving them hopes and dreams, letting them know like, yeah, you're in my plans, you're going to play. And, you know, if he's actually, you know, being honest about it, like, we're all talking about, you know, rotation, this, that, like, there's players who seem like they think they have a claim to the squad. Like, Lingard seems like he's going to be in our plans. Like, Lingard seems like he's going to actually get game time. And it just makes you think, hold on a minute, but Donny wasn't even getting game time. So how do you now fit Lingard into the equation? It seems like he rates Lingard more than he rates Donny. To me, that's the kind of vibe I've gotten. But like, it's just all messy, man. Like, you know, even with Ollie getting his contract, right? Even with Ollie getting his contract, it is still a make or break season because, you know, people are going to look at this season as being very, very important. Like, he can't get away with, you know, the mistakes he made last season because people will not have it. You know, the fans will not have it. Ollie in or Ollie out. Do you know what I mean? You know, you want to see improvement there. You do want to see improvement there. Somebody in chat said, talk about Ahmad. Unless I've missed the story about Ahmad, you know, all there really has been with Ahmad is, you know, he's been obviously at the Olympics and apparently he's performed well at the Olympics so far. And I talked about on a show a couple of days ago, like when I hear stuff about Ahmad doing well, you know, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. We know the talent he is. Him, Palestri, there's a bunch of them who have just impressed at every stage. Now, to be fair, Ahmad has done it at the highest level of all of them young ones, right? He's done it of all of the, you know, the young players we have. He's done it at the highest level. And so, you know, I'm really excited about Ahmad. But I don't think there's been any stories there. Lingard as a left wing can be better, I guess. You know, maybe that's what, guys, imagine, right? Imagine the new season starts, right? And Rashford gets his surgery and he's out for 2 months. And we're all there, like, all of us are just fools, right? Sitting here thinking, yeah, it's obviously going to be Martial playing on the left, right? First game, Lingard on the team sheet, starting at the left. Oh my God. Are you dumb? Yeah. I'm fuming. I am fuming. I am absolutely fuming if that's what happens. Absolutely fuming. Deep voice, yeah, deep voice. People always say I have a deep voice. Some people don't like my voice. Some people say it's too deep. They can't understand what I'm saying. Apologies if you can't. If you can't, there's not really much I can do. All right, let's get to some more stuff because, you know, obviously we've been talking about Varane non-stop over the past couple of days. So I don't want to bore you with too much Varane stuff. But of course, Simon Jones mentioned Varane in his article, talking about things moving in the right direction. And there's also been more talks about about Diallo. Why do I keep saying Diallo? What's wrong with me? About Varane, sorry, because Real Madrid have a friendly against Rangers, but plenty of senior players from Real Madrid haven't travelled. So, you know, people like Carvajal, Alaba, Modric, they haven't actually gone to the friendly. But Varane is also one of those players. He's not gone to that friendly. He's staying in Madrid. And so obviously that's still sparking people going, oh my God, what's happening with him? And Samuel Luckhurst from Manchester Evening News talked about Varane a bit more. And he basically said, you know, again, this is a direct quote, by the way. He said, but again, it's heading in the right direction. Slow progress day by day. These things take time. Now, look, I'll read the rest. He says, I think United will want him before the Leeds game because before the lead game comes along, so he can have something of a bedding in process. And the Everton friendly is certainly shaping up to be a dress rehearsal for that Leeds game. Now, to me, it is essential that we bring in, you know, whatever players we are planning to bring in, it is essential that we bring them in before the season starts. Like, I don't want us to go into the Leeds game with Maguire and Lindelof at the back and we lose to Leeds because of some silly error that Lindelof made. And we're all sitting there thinking, well, if you're just brought in Varane, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I really don't want that to happen. And I fear that could happen. So, you know, at the moment, I'm just sort of hoping that we can get this done, but it does seem like things are moving in the right direction. Please say finish him. I'm not saying finish him. Is Declan Rice coming at you, Manchester? It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it. Can't stand Magaluf. Look, I don't think anybody can, Advath. I don't think anybody can stand him or can stand them together, right? I think everybody, at the moment, everybody loves Maguire, right? You can't dislike Maguire, right? Everybody loves Maguire at the moment, but it's like, you don't want to see Maguire with Lindelof at the back. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. Suzanne says, I would let James go personally. He is not fitted into the team, just not enough space for him to run into. Yeah, I just think there's too many players ahead of him. Too many players ahead of him. I don't think it's going to work out in that sense, but nevertheless, who knows who Ollie's favourites are, because that's what's important at the end of the day. Who are Ollie's favourite players? Funny how Ollie blamed the Spurs result on the lack of a preseason when he's busy wasting this one. I think it's look, different preseasons are used in different ways, right? You know, for the most part, right, you know, you want to have a preseason to get your match sharpness up, right? You want players to get sharp. You want players to be ready for the start of the season, which we weren't, right? We weren't ready for the start of the season last year. This year, though, you know, we want to be ready, but a lot of our senior players aren't available. A lot of our senior players went to the Euros and therefore are on holiday, right? And so I think, you know, when they come back, they will feature in the squad mainly. And the senior players who we have who are going to be useful, people like Donny and Martial, who are somewhat around, I think they're still, you know, dealing with certain injuries and still recovering and getting back to, you know, the right position they need to be in. So I will expect to see now with the rest of the preseason games, more of the first teamers getting time. But I get the frustration, but, you know, I wouldn't say so quickly that we've wasted this preseason. I wouldn't say that quickly. Let's see how the rest of the preseason goes. I do expect him to play the first teamers more in the next couple games. That's what I'm expecting. Ahmad or Palestri, who would you send out on loan? I'd send Palestri on loan and I'd keep Ahmad. Palestri's impressed me. Palestri's been great as well. But he's only been great so far in these preseason games and in under 23 games and in games for Alves, whereas we've seen Ahmad be great in Premier League games and Europa League games. And so I'd much rather just have him because I also know what I'm going to get with him. The one and only Zaimi Assi. Look, Martial could come to the Emirates to fulfill his potential and become another French legend. Bloody hell, man. Well, look, of all the French players you guys like to stock on your wage bill, he'd probably be the best one. So, you know, fair enough for you wanting him. Darragh Kennedy coming in again saying, follow up on the previous question. James, Mata, Matic, Jesse staying, Ahmad, Palestri, Elanga loans. That is what concerns me. I'm confused with the strategy. Well, it's interesting you mentioned Elanga because, you know, wasn't Ollie yesterday talking about Elanga potentially, you know, staying or things along those lines, right? With, you know, Elanga and Preston and, you know, these kind of, like, the strategy confuses me. I try not to take note of what Ollie says anymore because Ollie will just say anything to please the players, to please everyone, right? Like that's sort of where it is with Ollie, it feels like. But yeah, I guess so. I'd love to see at least two of the three young players be more involved, and then two of, you know, the three names you mentioned, you know, take a step back. Whether that step back be James being sold and Maatson not extending his contract, who knows? And with you mentioning Matic, right? It's funny you mentioned Matic because, like I said earlier in the show, guys, we don't see things about Matic. Like we don't hear stories about Matic leaving whatsoever. And for the first time, I've seen something from Simon Jones in the Daily Mail talking about Matic considering his options, right? And so that's something to pay note to, right? If we start hearing more and more about Matic, you know, considering certain options and whatnot, I like Matic, but it's a good thing because he's the kind of player who, you know, it does just feel like he needs to move on. And hopefully not into a coaching role for us because we all know how that goes. If only Matic was 3 years younger, yeah, you know, of course. You know, give me a younger Matic and I'd take him any day of the week. But just not how it is. Just not how it is at the moment. Sancho's good on the left side too. And that's another thing, yeah, you got to consider that. Leaf, you make a great point. You know, Sancho is a phenomenal left-sided player. Playing on the left is, you know, more of his natural position, if anything, right? And so we could start the season with Sancho on the left, Greenwood on the right, because we all know how much Ollie loves Greenwood. We could play Sancho on the left, Greenwood on the right, Cavani up front. Like, that's a possibility as well. So there's plenty of competition for that spot on the left. And I just don't think, you know, we should be considering Dan James to be that person. Yeah. don't think Dan James should be the person we should be considering. So, Levin, would you give Pogba a new contract on 400k a week to persuade him to stay? Nah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I think I'm moving towards a point where I'm like, I've accepted that like he's going. I think that's where I'm at. Like in my headspace, I feel like I've moved towards a point now where I've just accepted it. It's the story is done, and however that story ends, whether that be we sell him or whether we keep him, not sell him, sorry, whether we sell him or whether he just runs it down and leaves on the free. Like I've just accepted it. I've accepted that's what it is. And I wouldn't make him our highest paid player just to stay. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Look at this handsome young man. Hey, what's up, Haber? How you doing, Haber? My bro. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably agree with that. I think the Pogba story might just be done. That's whether you like Pogba or not, it's probably time to start accepting that the Pogba story is done, right? Like his story at Manchester United is done. He was here from youth. He left on a free, turned into a world-class player. We brought him back. Didn't get that world-class player week in, week out. Probably lets him go on a free again. Thoughts on Mata being offered an ambassador role? It just seems like Mata is, just someone that's very liked. And we know that at the club at the moment, if you're very liked, that means there is a position for you. And, I don't have a problem with, ex-players, being given ambassador roles and things of that nature. I do have a problem with people like Mata being on, massive wages and taking up a spot on the bench when he's just shouldn't be on the bench. That's just that's my problem with it. So, it's funny because like they talk about Mata being important and it's like, a lot of his role now is more of a coaching role, right? If Mata is a coach, essentially, that means he's like the highest paid coach that we have, right? Like from what I know, if Mata is still on like 100k or so a week or something around that, right? Like he's essentially being paid that to be a coach that sits on the bench. That would, no coach is making that much money. Sorry, maybe there's managers themselves out there, right? Like the actual head coach, but like, Kieran McKenna's not making how much Mata's making. So like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me at all. But that's just what it is. Zayn could buy Arsenal with his super chat. Zayn could fund Arsenal to actually sign good players, but is what it is. 140k a week he's on. Yeah, that's what he was on. That's what we all knew he was on, Shane. But it was reported that he took a wage reduction. And we don't know how much of a reduction that is. So we don't know how much he's on anymore. But if it is still 140k a week, like that's just insane. For him to essentially be a coach. Doesn't make sense. It will be James and Sancho against Leeds. Maybe, guys, maybe it is right to play James against Leeds, right? When you think about it, it might actually be genius to play James against Leeds. Because if we play James against Leeds and he puts in an absolutely brilliant performance, we all know who's going to be ringing up United the next day. Marcelo Bielsa, he's going to be on, it's probably going to be his translator, but they're going to be on the phone with United asking for Dan James again. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that is pure genius for James to play. If he has a good game against Leeds, then, Leeds will go back in for him. Brilliant. Thank you for reading my chats. Love this channel. Look, we all love this channel. Like, it's the United stand, man. Like, I think a lot of people think I was just plucked out of nowhere. And to some degree, I was kind of plucked out of nowhere. But like many of you, I was just somebody in chat, somebody who just watched all the streams. And that's what the channel's about. It's about fan opinion. Yesterday, I did a live on Instagram where before the match, I did a live on Instagram where we got people in. I was really trying to get people's hot takes, people's unpopular opinions, and we sort of tried to debate them one-on-one. So, we're going to try to do more of those. So be sure to get involved with that. Make sure you're following the Instagram and paying attention to when we go live. I'm looking to bring people in and talk about Manchester United, talk about football. So be sure to get involved in that. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I appreciate all of you guys hanging out. It's been a fun stream. I've never done a morning show. The morning show is like the most important show, right? Everybody watches. Mark is here usually, and it's a lot of fun. But you guys have been really, really welcoming on this show. I appreciate it very, very much. My chat never got read. Really, I apologize. I apologize. You know, I am only human. I do miss some things sometimes. But guys, there will be a show tonight at 8 p.m. We're gonna have a panel show where we're talking about Ollie's contract, you know, the new contract obviously being a thing. We're going to be talking a lot about that. So that should be a lot of fun. Be sure you're there for that in the evening. If there's any news that breaks, we'll be here with that as well. Thank you very much for watching, paying attention. It's been a pleasure. And I'll see you guys all soon. Good night. Ooh, good morning.